Welcome, guys. Let's talk more about Qigong. So let's see what we got today. First question. Let's see. It's from Alex. Alex Dow 8042. Hi, Alex. Okay. Thanks, Adam. Could you answer my question? In classical Taoism, celibacy is greatly emphasized, but in each one states it is not so important and one should stick to modern science viewpoint, which says it is no good for prostate health. Oh, that's a common question. Sexuality in Taoist practice. Good question. I give you my 2 cents. So, when you say classical Taoism, there's actually what you said about classical Taoism. Celibacy is greatly emphasized. It really depends on what you mean by classical Taoism. There's the original Zhou Dynasty Taoism, or original Taoism, or classical Taoism, based on non-doing practices, and then there's the Han Dynasty, like religious type of Taoism, right, which emphasize internal alchemy and also doing practices. And if we go farther down the line, we have the modern Qigong kind of community that still use the term. They link themselves to Taoist lineage. So Taoism is a very general term, right? So I'll give you my feeling on this based on original Taoism. If you look at it from a Western point of view, because you mentioned each one emphasize that we should use modern science, then, I mean, everything in the West, if you just go on your Facebook feed right now, everything is so sexualized. From music to movies to any kind of advertisement to people, social values, everything is very, very sexualized in the West, right? Or in modern Asia, doesn't matter where we are. And I think that's good, but I think also we pay a price in terms of there's so many studies and literature out on that, how it ruins relationship when everything is overly sexualized, because you start to look at people as sexual objects, right? Instead of more deep caring kind of thing. Porn addiction is a big deal right now, and most of the civilized world is having a huge problem with that, especially with the young. But I don't want to go into that because you can just look it up online. There's so many psychological studies and literature on this. They do a much way better job than I ever could talking about this. Yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of problems are out there from this overly sexualized world that we live in. So, Wes. Then you look at it from the East, this idea of suppression that you're quoting, which really is a Han Dynasty thing. That, you shouldn't have sex or you should hold it for a certain day. And depending on your age, you should really suppress your sexual urges and not have too much sex. And that's kind of Han Dynasty doing practice kind of rule, especially in the religious Taoist phase. It's also in the more modern TCM, Chinese medicine kind of recommendation, right? But if you look at original Taoism, it doesn't talk about suppressing your sexual desire or sexual activity in any way. So that's the third point of view, because you mentioned two point of view. From an Eastern classical Taoist point of view, which is really from Han Dynasty and also modern TCM, you talk about suppressing your sexual urges and not having a lot of sex. And then the West has said, hey, sex, let's go for it. And I'm saying both of those, there's a price to pay, because if you overly sexualize stuff, the verdict is out with all the addiction that's based on sex and how it ruins relationship and general mental health. If you overdo it too much. Of course, moderation is fine. If you look at it from a classical Han Dynasty point of view, or suppression, I don't think that's a good thing at all, this classical Taoist suppression thing from the Han Dynasty, because if you look around the world from other religious or spiritual tradition where suppressing sex was a big thing for thousands of years, it led to a lot of sick behavior, right? Because like the psychologist, one of the founding members, founding fathers of modern psychology, the great Carl Jung said, whatever you suppress comes back double, because you're fighting yourself, and eventually that has to be released, and it's usually not in a healthy way, right? So that's Han Dynasty to modern TCM, kind of, not all of it, but a pretty common recommendation of suppression. And then over here, you have the overly sexualized, everything's obsessive of sex, modern. But a third viewpoint would be original Taoism, which is what I practice, the Zhou Dynasty stuff, and that is they're the same with anything in the form realm, whether it's eating, sleeping, or exercise. And sex is no exception. It's based on the idea that there's no suppression, just go ahead and do it. It's based on naturalness. Doing it is fine, don't suppress it. On the other hand, whatever you do, make sure it is done with balance and moderation. That's it. So they take the middle ground of both. One saying go for it, one is saying suppress it. Original Taoism saying neither. Let's take it both. Let's take the middle way, which is go for it, but in moderation. This seems like common sense, rather sex, eating, sleeping, or exercising, right? But just because something is common sense, it really doesn't mean you can make it work. Because the first part's really easy. Go for it. The second part, in moderation, that's not so easy. And the reason is because the way your brain works with the dopamine circuit, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, right? Eating, exercising, sex, same thing. You get a mini high, you get a mini dopamine rush out of it. And then when you don't do it, you crash. Next time you want even more, and then you crash. Then you want even more. So eventually it becomes an addiction, and that's where this eating addiction comes from, or sex addiction comes from, or exercise addiction comes from, where you indulge in something to the point where it's not healthy, and that's based on your dopamine crash, right? But a different section of the brain, like that runs on endorphins and serotonin. It doesn't really run on pleasure seeking, up and down, but it's more like a calm baseline, no high spikes, and that's running on serotonin and endorphins. We call it gratitude and contentment, whereas this is based on pleasure, right? So that's a different section in the brain. Now, if we look at it from a Qigong point of view, they don't say different sections of the brain 7,000 years ago. They'll talk about it from a point of view of different centers. You get your lower center, you get this center, and this center. So if you're running based on this center, your animal center, then that's kind of like constantly you want more sex, you want more food, you want more power. And we know if someone's obsessed about power, or obsessed about sex, or obsessed about food, from an ancient point of view, is not good. Because you're acting like you're the only person that exists. Like no one else matters. More from me. And that's what this center is about, the animal center, right? So this power center and sex and violence go together in such a way in this lower center, right? So then you're approaching at that part of the brain would be equivalent to the dopamine thing. To link the east and the west way of thinking. One's using a different section of the brain to talk about it. The other one's using different centers to talk about it. But if you move up the center and you start sitting or standing or meditating to the point where you're working on this center or this center, then you're no longer approaching anything, rather it's eating, sleeping, or sex from this point of view. You're no longer approaching it from a dopamine, me, more, up and down point of view. Now you're approaching it more like serotonin point of view, or endorphins, or gratitude and contentment, where there is natural moderation. And I'm not a neurologist, so I don't really know why that happens chemically. But what I noticed in myself, and a lot of my students reporting it, is since they started a lot of sitting practice, at first you go through the really crappy part of sitting, right? Like your mind can't shut up. And then, okay, you keep sitting, eventually all the blood goes down here, all the energy goes down here, so you're not in your head thinking anymore, and you're not in your emotions going up and down anymore. You settle down here. When that happens long enough, you root into the ground, it sprouts back up, and you feel this really, really deep sense of joy and calm and peace. And it takes a while to settle there, because boredom will set in, right? But eventually you settle into that space, and it's beautiful. Once you get used to it, then your mind starts surfacing suppressed memories and trauma and all that bad stuff coming out. So you got to deal with that couple of months of healing where you're releasing stuff, right? And that usually lasts quite a few months if you practice consistently. Once that's over, you return back to that calmness, bliss, and peace part. For students that have got to that part of the journey, they repeat over and over and over again their obsessive need of some of the ones I wrote down. Actually, it's not in this notepad. But they're talking about vaping, cigarettes, alcohol, sex addiction, obesity and overeating. All their addictions has reduced dramatically. And they're very surprised by that. So they usually report it right away in the student community, in the forum, or they usually private message me. And when they ask me why, I can't explain it to them from a chemical point of view because I'm not a neurologist, how the synapses work precisely. But I can explain it from a Taoism center point of view. And that is you shift the center from operating from down here, your animal chakra or center, to up here, especially in the heart. So you don't experience things from a dopamine chasing point of view, the up and down, the pleasure seeking, the me. Instead, you experience things from a serotonin, calm, contentment, and grateful point of view, based on caring and compassion. When that happens, when your brain chemistry changes like that, and you're operating from a different center, all your addiction urges get reduced. They don't disappear completely. I mean, you still enjoy eating, but now you don't have this uncontrolled compulsion that you can't stop yourself from keep on eating just to seek more pleasure. Same with sex, same with exercising, same with violence, same with whatever people are addicted to. Cigarettes, vaping, alcohol. So I get all these different messages based on that. And it really makes me happy when I hear students report that. Because there's no discipline and self-struggle and beating the crap out of yourself. You're simply sitting. And then these things start dropping off bit by bit, right? And that's one of the many benefits of sitting practices. So I hope I answer that. So to me, it's not about suppressing, and it's definitely not about overindulging either. So I picked the middle ground, right? And yeah, it's unfortunate that Taoism has such a bad press about that because of the Han Dynasty stuff. But before I go, I also want to say this links up to martial art too, because sometimes I see the parallel, right? You talk about sex, it's hard not to talk about violence. You talk about violence, it's hard not to talk about sex. Because if you look at, for example, where I live in Canada, or this part of the world, if you look at any blockbuster, right? The movies that make the most money, from, the 80s all the way up to now, sex and violence is always linked together. We love sex, we love violence. So, because I taught martial arts for so long, and for a large part of it, I taught combatives, not just martial art. And I did a lot of private security. I'm going to talk a little bit about martial arts context in terms of violence, right? People are really addicted to conflict, and they're really addicted to violence, just as much as people are addicted to sex. And I think it's important for people to see the parallel. Because it's the same running of the brain to me exists. On this side, you got overindulgence, and on this side, you have suppression. But again, the middle ground is what's important. And martial art is the same. On this side, we have overindulgence. People love verbal debate. People love emotional debates. People love physical fighting. They'll pay a lot of money just to see two guys fight. Or if two guys start fighting in a bar, they can't wait to watch it. So rather it's psychological and verbal, or rather it's physical, we're really addicted to violence, and we love seeing it. Whether we're playing video games, or we're watching a boxing match, or we're watching a bar fight, or we're just arguing with somebody online, people are addicted to conflict. In fact, if you watch a movie or if you read a story, the peak of the movie, the climax, is usually about the hero winning against what's evil. It's about the battle. We would not want to watch a movie about a fight. We need to have that fight as a human being. We're addicted to conflict, right? Because our ancestors were hunter and gatherers. So we're so addicted to fighting, and yet we all claim we want peace. Inner peace, world peace, peace. But our actions suggest otherwise in our culture. And then on this side, we have suppression. Be nice. Don't hurt people. Obey rules. Don't let things escalate. You want to disescalate all conflict. All this PC stuff and all this modern conflict resolution stuff, right? That we see especially in the professional world. So you got suppression here. And then you have overindulgence here. So again, Taoism takes the middle ground. Unlike other traditions where it says turn the other cheek, or don't fight, or don't ever use violence. So you got suppression. And then on the other side, let's go, let's fight. They don't believe in what we say. If they don't convert, we're going to kill them. Taoism doesn't do that. It's right in the middle. It says right in the Tao Te Ching, mentioned by Lao Tzu, that weapons are an instrument of evil. Let me try to quote this properly. Paraphrasing. Weapons are the instrument of evil, and good people don't use it. But if you have to use it as a last resort, then you use it with constraint. With restraint. So it says it very clearly in the scripture. Don't do it. It's not a good thing. Don't indulge in it. But sometimes as a last resort, you have to do it. So again, it's taking the middle ground. So as a martial artist, if you can kind of look at that, that to me will better everything that you do. Because most of the time in martial art, we're kind of indulging in violence. We might pay a lot of lip service, especially if the parents is watching, about how it's about discipline and peace, but it's not that hard to get most martial art guys to get angry and get egotistical. Deep inside, they're still stuck and addicted to violence and fighting in one form or another, right? And on the other side, we have suppression. We're teaching people not to fight. But from a Taoist point of view, it's like, look, don't fight. Do everything in your power to avoid it. But if you have to fight, get really damn good at it. That changes everything. It usually changes an empty hand martial art into a weapon-based martial art right away. So you become more dangerous in the same time you become more peaceful in the exact same time. But because it's not a martial art podcast, I'm going to stop right here. I just want to do a brief parallel between sex and violence. And to suggest that food, violence, eating, exercising, sleeping, in the form realm, the basic is actually the same. You're dealing with the lower center, and it's about taking the middle way, like the Buddha said, instead of suppression or overindulgence. Even if someone contemplate on this and understand culturally and also psychologically how that the middle way is good, it doesn't mean it is easy to do. In fact, it's almost impossible. So you have to actually rewire the chemicals in your brain and how your body works. That's where meditation and qigong or prayer comes in, right? And that's the mystic path. For someone that is not, doesn't want to do it, they don't have to take the qigong path. They can also take the shamanistic path, which uses rituals and psychedelics. In either way, I think it is important to give yourself a chance to rewire how your mind and your body works so you can actually be in the middle way. Because knowing about it psychologically or philosophically is actually meaningless and useless unless you can actually rewire what's the energetics that's inside the body. Talking about it doesn't really help. Anyways, I'll leave you with that. And what's the last thing I want to say? Oh yeah, an announcement. So as you guys know, we have a Qigong program on my website that's based on one weekly live stream class a week, with half of it is guided Qigong meditation, sitting, standing, moving, and laying down, and the other half is live Q&A. It comes with once a month a 1 hour free Q&A for personalized coaching, also a free student community forum. And also for those that miss any classes, we have a student-free archive library with all the classes in it. So the announcement is, next week we're going to be working on a sitting meditation along with the walking meditation that some of you have been asking about, and we're going into detail about that. So I hope to see you guys there. Follow the links below in the description, and I'll see you next time.